and it's been a beautiful weather for our weekend. And so it's good to see everybody here this morning. We are finishing this book we're studying, which is 1 Corinthians. This is the book we have been using. And then we have another book we're using for next week, which is for Proverbs. Does anybody need a book for next time? Do you guys want a book? Oh, okay. Great. Okay. Let's see. We got. Okay. So, all right. Great. Great. So we are not going to span multiple quarters for 1 Corinthians. There's not enough material left, although you could talk about it for another quarter without any trouble at all. And we'll kind of get to that more at the end. Today we are studying in chapter 16, which is a short one. It's only 24 verses. And so what we'll do is we'll study what it says for chapter 24, and then we will kind of go through a quick run through of some of the things that we've studied in 1 Corinthians. So let's start off by saying, what is 1 Corinthians? Where are we? Who is the human author? Paul, the Apostle Paul. And where is Corinth? What do we know about Corinth? Yeah. So it is at a crossroads. It's a city that's a trading center, so lots and lots of people. So if you think of where's a trading center today, you might think Chicago or Los Angeles or New York, whatever. Lots and lots of people go in different directions from different backgrounds and so on. And they had a lot of idolatry there. They had the Acrocorinth, which was a statue for Aphrodite. They had many pagan people in the city, and some of the people that were in the church at Corinth, that was their background. They came from there. So Paul helped start the church there, and in his words in this letter, he had some pretty strong words about them getting away from the initial teachings that he provided when he was there. And so we've gone through all of that. But here in chapter 16, Paul is changing gears rather than talking to them about all the things that they had were having challenges with. Now he was talking about something else. And this could have been a topic that was in the letter they wrote to him, and that's the letter we don't have. There's a letter that was written by the church at Corinth to Paul. We don't see the letter, but we see that this, what Paul is writing here, and part of this is a response back to them. And so in this chapter 16, he's most definitely talking about the collection for the saints in Jerusalem in terms of the first part of it. So would somebody like to read chapter 16, verses 1 through 4? Thank you, Sister Debbie. So what's happening in these verses? Mm-hmm. And he's given some fairly specific instructions. He's not saying too many words here, but he's given them some specific instructions. First of all, that it's being collected for the saints, and then he's also given this order to the churches in Galatia. So he's not just talking to this church alone and saying that they should do it themselves. He's also, you kind of get the idea that Paul's telling this to everybody, all the other churches. You need to support the church at Jerusalem. And he's even prescribing the way you do it in verse 2 here. Upon the first day of the week, which is the day that they were going to church, let every one of you lay by him in store. So when it says every one of you, what does that mean? Everybody, right? So everybody's supposed to participate in it. And so we know from our other studies about the widow's mite, and she gave an offering, and how much was a mite? Was it very much money? Right, it was all she had, so it was 100%. So she gave 100%. So that's not exactly what Paul is saying here, but he is saying definitely everyone should give. And also, it's not just, sometimes when we give a love offering, we say, okay, today let's have love offering, let's give for somebody, and we collect something and we give it to them. This was a recurring thing where they were collecting this money over a period of time. So it was a love offering, but it wasn't just a one-time, empty out what's in your wallet or whatever it is, or give from what you have today. It's really more of an ongoing commitment to support the church at Jerusalem. And what do we have that's anything like that we do? Yeah, we've made a commitment as a church to support the missionaries, and each month the church gives so much money for missionaries to support their work, and they pretty much expect it to show up when we make that commitment to provide it to them. Another one is if we make a collection for camp. So that's something we do once in a while. We say, hey, start and collect for camp, don't forget. We collect whenever people remember to bring some funds, whatever. We collect it over time, and then that's dedicated for that purpose. And so here he says, lay by him in store as God hath prospered him, that there be no gatherings when I come. So he said, don't try to do it all when I get there. Do it all now and do it faithfully, so that when I do come, there's more funds collected. He doesn't say that exactly, but that's what that means. And when I come, whosoever ye shall approve by your letters, then will I send to bring your liberality unto Jerusalem. So what does that part of it mean? Right. And it was really important to have witnesses that it was being done the right way, because there are lots of people who were saying things were being done the wrong way. They weren't telling the truth about things, even in the Corinthian church. And so Paul, being wise here, is saying that they will appoint someone and they will go together and deliver it. And it's a pretty good way to assure that it actually gets done correctly. And if I be meet that I go also, they shall go with me. Okay. Why do we think the people in Jerusalem needed an offering or help? Mm-hmm. Yeah, drought was a pretty big thing, and most of them were agrarian economies. And so, if you have a drought, things don't grow very well if you don't have water, and so they were most definitely suffering in Jerusalem, and that was the purpose of it. Okay, so let's go to the next portion here, which is chapter 16, verses 5 through 9. Okay, so he's kind of given his travel plans. And Paul has often said the Lord will, and didn't always work out as he had planned. And in this case, he's kind of saying what he sees are the next steps. And in verse 9, for a great door and effectual is open unto me, and there are many adversaries. What is he saying in verse 9? Mm-hmm. And Paul kind of had a repeating pattern. So he was a devout Jew. He taught as the Jews taught. He taught the law. He taught against Christ and against Christians. And then he was converted on the road to Damascus. And he completely changed the other way. And as a supporter of Christ, he witnessed first to the Jews, usually in the synagogue, and then he would go from the synagogue to where the Gentiles are after that. And so we know from other things we've studied, Paul didn't always get a good reception from people. A lot of people that received Paul received him just how he would have received him before he was converted. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, accepting Jesus as our Savior and doing all of what we can do with love. And we studied that some a bit already. In the next portion here, he's talking about some additional, I guess you would say, logistics. And this is for verses 10 through 12. Would somebody like to read that? Chapter 16, verses 10 through 12. Yes. Okay, so he's talking a little bit about logistics. So he's talking about Timothy coming. Timothy wasn't there, but Timothy was going to come. And Timothy could have been a messenger to come and take the collection that was going to go to Jerusalem, also with another messenger. But this was his way of introducing Timothy and saying, when he does come, welcome him and treat him like you would treat me because he is a brother. And then also in verse 12, we saw about Apollos very early on in the chapter, or not in the chapter, in the book. In the book where the Corinthian church, the people there were distinguishing between who was baptizing them. So that some would say, well, Paul baptized me, others would say John baptized me, others were saying Apollos baptized me, and they were making some difference or distinction about all that, but God doesn't provide a distinction between all those things. It doesn't mean anything. If it's done scripturally, that's what's the important thing, and the rest of it isn't. And so he talked about Apollos here, just saying that, yeah, he's a brother and we work together, and I know his plans, and right now his plans is not to come at this time, but he'll come whenever whenever he has an opportunity to do so, is more or less what he's saying there. Kind of sending him a message that Apollos and Paul are most definitely working together. So in the next verses here, Paul is giving instructions to them as he's wrapping up his letter to them. And let's go ahead and read, let's see, how about through verse 16? So verse 13 through 16. Okay. Thank you, Sister Joanne. So what he's telling us here, he's changing gears and giving them instructions, being more positive than he was pretty much throughout the rest of it, where he was giving them instructions on what they were doing incorrectly, and we'll summarize that in a little bit here. He's really saying to them first, in verse 13, watch ye, stand fast in the faith. When you say watch ye, what does a watchman do? So stays alert for pretty much anything. So it's any alert for any threats, for anything that might happen. If you're a soldier on the battlefield, you're paying attention to what's going on around you. You're paying attention to what's happening. You're looking and watching. You are pretty much doing the opposite of what the church at Corinth had been doing. We studied about them already. They've been having drunken parties and other things. That's pretty much the exact opposite of being alert and being aware of what's going on. We need to be alert against Satan. Satan is always there to try to do something to thwart God's work. We also need to be alert against temptation. They had problems in the Corinthian church with that, and we saw some of the results of it when it turned into sin and it wasn't dealt with correctly. And so for us, we should be mindful that temptation will happen, and we need to rely on the Lord for his strength to fight against it. Also, what about apathy and indifference? We see something that doesn't make sense. We see something that is against what God is teaching us, and we don't do anything. We don't say anything. We just, it doesn't affect me, right? Doesn't have any impact. He's saying, watch for it. God expects us to show the love that he gives us to others. And salvation is not like an award medal, like you ran across the finish line and you're saved, and okay, now here's my badge and I'm good, and I'm going to be going to heaven. I don't need to worry about anything. That's not the end of our relationship with God. That's the beginning. And so he expects us to serve him. He expects us to talk to others. He expects us to share the plan of salvation with others, help other people. And it's the exact opposite. It's really a call for us to work, not work for our salvation, but work to do his work. Also, we should be on the alert for false teaching. There was false teaching that was happening at the church at Corinth, and we saw some of that as we went through it. They put importance on things that weren't important. They didn't put importance on things that were. The Lord's Supper, they pretty much did that exactly wrong. If you look at the way that they did it, and Paul gave them good instructions on how to do it correctly. Another one that we should be alert for is Jesus' return. We heard about that as well. And if we really have a sense of urgency that the Lord is going to return soon, then our mindset and our attitude would be, look at all the people that are not saved, that need to be saved, that need to hear the plan of salvation before it's too late. When we think of our friends, we think of our loved ones, we think of the ones we work with, we think of the acquaintances, the people we see all the time. Are they saved? Do we know if they're saved? Have we shared the plan of salvation with them? It's a different perspective that we have when we're trying to do the Lord's work. He also talks about standing fast in the faith. And we already know that the Corinthian church struggled with that. You can't stand fast if you don't know what the teaching says. If you don't know what the Bible says, if you don't know what the Lord has commanded for us to do, how you're going to be able to practice it. And so if you read it, if you study it, and you understand it, that as a Christian, you also have the Holy Spirit inside of you helping you to understand it, then we should practice it the right way. And we should also expect the people around us to do it that way too. He also talks about being mature, and if you look at quit you like men, it's basically man up. It's not child up, it's man up. And so when we are called on to take responsibility, that's what we should do. We should take the responsibility of an adult. And when we see things that need to be done, we should take care of it and work with others to take care of it. This is the opposite of what Paul thought was happening with the Corinthian church members. They were all over the place. We need spiritual and moral nourishment, and that comes from the Bible and studying the Bible and working through it together. The Lord will help us understand it. It encourages us to do it God's way. We put away childish things and we seek to please God with whatever ways we are able. We look for what He's expecting us to do, and that's what we try to follow. And if we just ignore that altogether and just do whatever, how does that help God? How does that show us as a Christian? How can anybody know we're a Christian if we don't change our behavior and change the way we act and try to do it in a mature way? Also, he says here, be strong in verse 13. This wasn't a call for the Corinthian church to join the fitness center. I think I talked about one of the churches. We were looking for a church in Nashville. Abby and Tyler had moved down there, and I saw a couple of seconds of video, and it was a workout session. So they were doing aerobics to church songs, jumping around, everything with tennis shoes on, all that stuff. And I thought, I think I got the wrong channel. It sure didn't look like it was a church service. And when the Corinthian church was called on to be strong, it wasn't talking about them being physically strong. This was being strong by allowing God to work with us and through us. So it's not our strength. Our strength is submitting to the Lord. Our strength is trying not to do it by ourselves, but instead saying, Lord, please help me with whatever it is you're trying to do. If you're trying to witness to somebody, you don't have to do it by yourself. Ask the Lord to help you. If you're trying to do something hard in your job, you don't have to do it by yourself. Ask for the Lord's help. He can work with us and through us, and we can better do His work when He's the one that strengthens us. Look at the Hebrews when they left Egypt. So you had the parting of the Red Sea, but they still had to walk across. They still had to have faith that the Lord was holding back the water long enough for them to get across there. So the Lord expects us to work. He's going to do His part, but we need to do our part too. And if we don't do our part, we're not going to really yield much fruit. We're really not going to yield much results. The Lord's a lot of times just waiting for us. He's just waiting for us to go to Him and ask for His help and ask for what we need and to submit ourselves to Him. And when we do it, the Lord will bless us. And we saw that with the Hebrews when they went into the promised land. They had an initial battle that went really well. They said, oh, well, we're just going to have another battle. What happened? When they went to Ai, remember that? They were defeated. Why? Because they didn't seek the Lord. They left the Lord out of it. So being strong doesn't mean being strong with our own strength. It really means adding the Lord's strength to ours. We can overcome Satan and temptation when we rely on God's strength. And do we have to wait till the moment of temptation happens? If we have a problem in a certain area in our life, do we have to wait until it happens? Can we proactively ask for the Lord's help? There was somebody that, and Darla knows all this, so we would go to the kids' events, and there could be 10 people, there could be 20, there could be 200 or 300, depending on what it was. And there was always somebody that would seek me out every single time. And he would try to say something, I don't know, just to stir me up, just anything at all. And, it could be something about one of our kids, it could be anything. And I was always wondering why was he doing that? And so I would often pray about it, that I would respond to him as a Christian, not respond in some way that I wanted to from a natural reaction. I would just try to be calm, be peaceful, and just be kind to him. And that's pretty much what I did. And it wasn't through my strength, it was through the Lord helping me to deal with it. Our spiritual strength comes from self-sacrifice, self-denial, and self-discipline. When we use God's strength to do his work, we get stronger as a result of it. Think of all the trials and things we've been through. Think of all the things that the Lord has helped us get through. One of the things that I went through was prostate cancer, and the Lord helped me. I'm alive because he helped me. It wasn't anything I did. I'm very blessed to have a wife that's a nurse that knows all that stuff. But had we not had the testing and checks in time and not had the right people doing it and the Lord's blessings, I wouldn't even be here today for sure. And so there's lots of times where we can rely on the Lord, and the results that we see will be much better than any results we could achieve on our own. Also here he talks about being loving. That's let all your things be done with charity. And you remember chapter 13? Do y'all remember when we studied that just a couple of weeks ago? So chapter 13 was when Paul took a break and talked about the supremacy of love over pretty much everything. And what he really related to us in those 13 verses was how God's love works with us. And it's a really great description of it, and I'll be talking about it just a little bit more in a second, but we learned a lot about that already. If you could read verse 15 through verse 24. Yeah.
Salutation to me, Paul, with my own hand. If any man love not the Lord Jesus Christ, let him be anathema, maranatha. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you. My love be with you all in Christ Jesus. Amen.
Thanks, Brother Mike. And so what Paul is reminding us here is one of the things that Satan tries to convince us is that we're alone, that there's nobody there to help us, there's nobody going through anything that we're going through. And what he's telling here is the names of so many faithful people, Stephanas and Fortunatus and Achaicus, and Priscilla and Aquila, who they knew already, and Paul himself. He's telling about what they've done, and he's talking about how all of us are working together for the same objectives. Here in verse 17, for that which was lacking on your part, they have supplied. we all work together. We do something to provide support. Somebody else does something to provide support. Somebody else does something. The Lord's work gets done. He's trying to show here that it's more than just the church at Corinth. There's so much more going on in the Lord's work. But we're all working together, not competing against each other for sure. And remember at the beginning, that was a lot of what he was telling the church at Corinth, is they were thinking of themselves as different sects and different groups within the church competing against each other, which shouldn't have happened even in the first place. And so the message there is there's a lot of faithful people in the church and outside the church that are all working together for the Lord's will. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. Just because it says church on the outside doesn't tell you what's on the inside. And in fact, that's one of the tools Satan uses, is put a lot of signboards on things to make you think something else and in fact, it really isn't. That's a great point. So, we're not quite to the end yet, but there are so many valuable verses here in 1 Corinthians. When we first started studying it, I thought, oh, well, we're just going to see what Paul has to say to the church at Corinth. And as we studied, it kind of made things really stick out to me, things we'd studied before, but I didn't realize they're in 1 Corinthians. I didn't realize this is where it was in the Bible. And so what I did in preparing for this morning is I kind of did a quick tour back through the beginning to pick up a handful of things. And I have to put a disclaimer on it because I probably won't hit some of the things that are your favorite things, and we can certainly add those to it. But I did want to pick up a few things as we go through. So the first one, if you go back to chapter 1, and we look at verses 18 through 20. If I can get my Bible here. For the preaching of the cross is to them that perish foolishness, but unto us which are saved is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and will bring to nothing the understanding of the prudent. Where is the wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the disputer of this world? Hath not God made foolish the wisdom of this world? For after that, in the wisdom of God, the world by wisdom knew not God. It pleased God by the foolishness of preaching to save them that believe. And so those words are very different than what people think outside the church, what people think about what we do here. Yes, exactly. It doesn't make, what I'm trying to say is it doesn't make logical sense that it would work. And it's the power of God that makes it work. It's not our power that makes it work. It's God's power that makes it work. Another one that I grabbed was 1 Corinthians 2 and verse 9. And if you look at that one, it's, but as it is written, eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither have entered in the heart of man the things which God hath prepared for them that love him. Think about that for a second. So we haven't seen it, we haven't heard it, we haven't imagined it. That's a pretty big list of things if you think about it. We can imagine a lot of things. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See and understand things, first of all, for certain that the world doesn't understand. And secondly, save people
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Lord really blesses us more than we can ever imagine. If you look at 1 Corinthians 3, 6 through 9, this is where the church at Corinth was having a contest on who was baptizing. And so they were stratifying themselves into groups based on who baptized each of them. And this was Paul telling them it's not important. And so here we are in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 6 through 9. And he talks about how does it work? I have planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So neither is he that planteth anything, neither he that watereth, but God that giveth the increase. Now he that planteth and he that watereth are one, and every man shall receive his own reward according to his own labor. For we are laborers together with God. You are God's husbandry, you are God's building. There's so much in those few words that Paul gave to us. My takeaway is that we have to do our part, whatever it is. When we reach out and we talk to people, are we responsible for saving anyone? We can't save anybody. That's God's power, not our power. But can we witness to somebody and tell them what God did in our life? Can we share the plan of salvation with someone? Can we share how our life has changed as a result of God being in it? We can do that. But we can also introduce them to other people that can do the same thing, right? They may look at one of us and say, well, I don't really identify with that too much. But they can talk to us here at a church gathering. More of us can share. And you know what? I think they'll pretty much get the idea of what we're trying to say if we're not a good communicator for some reason, or whatever our testimony is doesn't reach them, someone else's can. How many times have you heard about somebody being saved and accepting Jesus when you said something to them and they were out of your life, you never saw them again maybe, but then you heard later they were saved? That ever happened to any of you? Yeah. What about our kids? We all have all kinds of kids running around, and they're not necessarily perceiving every single thing the way an adult would, but they're certainly hearing it, and they're certainly learning it if they're here for enough time. But it's not today that they're going to be saved, but someday in the future, they're going to have to decide for themselves, do I want to accept Jesus Christ? And they can accept Jesus based on what they've seen from us. And if we think about that, and we think of what kind of a example are we setting, then it makes us think about it a little bit harder on some of the things that we may take for granted. I certainly do. Another verse that I grabbed out of here, there's so many, there's no way to get all of them. I feel bad picking just a handful. Another one is 1 Corinthians 3 and 11. For other foundation can no man lay than that is laid, which is Jesus Christ. There is no way to be saved without Jesus. When Brother Jim talked about other churches and other organizations, there's about as many plans of salvation as there are people that will tell you what you have to do, and most of them are by works. If you do this work or that work or the other work, then you're saved for today, but come back tomorrow. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, God's the one that put the whole plan together. Jesus came here, lived like one of us, and gave his life for us so that he could be our Savior. And mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. In fact, sometimes when we travel and we visit other churches, we'll hear the message. The message might be right, but the verses are wrong because the context, exactly what you're saying, because they didn't take a close enough look at it to see what they were studying. Another one is 1 Corinthians 9 and 16. For though I preach the gospel, I have nothing to glory of, for necessity is laid upon me, yea, woe unto me, if I preach not the gospel. So what does that tell you? That's Paul saying it's not about me. It's about God. And the reason I'm so adamant and so dedicated and devoted is because God has told me this is what I need to do. And I'm responsible for teaching the gospel. It's not optional for me to teach the gospel. That's what the Lord has called me to do, and that's what I'm going to do. And Paul, over and over again, points to the Lord and not to himself. And that's one way we can test whether someone is a true Christian or not that claims to be one. Another one is 1 Corinthians 10 and 13. There's so many in here, and I know I missed some that you're thinking about, and it wasn't intentional on my part, but I was trying to just show there's so many valuable teachings within 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians 10 and 13, there hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that you may be able to bear it. So when you're saved, when you accept Jesus as your Savior, it's not like you're made out of Teflon and suddenly now you're just the strongest warrior that ever lived. I think it's you're just wiser about your situation. And here Paul is saying, you will be tempted just like you are now. But God is going to help you. And we saw from other examples, you have to rely on the Lord. You can't rely on your own strength to do it. First Corinthians 10 and 31 is another one. Whether therefore ye eat or drink, or whatsoever ye do, do all to the glory of God. So we spend time eating, we spend time drinking. That whatsoever you do, that's the rest of it. That covers 99.9% of everything else that we do. And it says, whatever we do, do it for the glory of God. That's very plain language. For the Lord's Supper, if you would look at 1 Corinthians 11, starting in verse 17 and going to the end in verse 34. We're not going to read all those verses. We already did that. But if you ever want to know more and understand better about the Lord's Supper, it's a fantastic place to read and understand what it says. So glad that it's in here. And then chapter 13 was a pause where there's so many different verses in here that are helpful to us. And here he talks about God's love for us. It's only 13 verses. It amazes me in the Bible how few words convey so much information. And God is speaking to us and helping us understand, in this case, his love and his love for us. In verse 4, charity suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up, doth not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil. And there's so much more here too. But not easily provoked, that means we should have patience. And sometimes my wife reminds me that I don't have too much patience. So I need to work on that among pretty much all the rest of it as well. But this is the kind of love that God has for us, and this is the kind of love He's expecting us to show to other people. Also, we studied about the resurrection. That was just last week, right? And so we studied quite a bit about it. And if you look in 15, we'll just do the last part of it. Would somebody like to read 15 verses 51 through 58?
For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. And this corruptible must put on incorruption, and this mortal must put on immortality. So when this corruptible shall have put on incorruption, and this mortal shall have put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, Death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? The sting of death is sin, and the strength of sin is the law. But thanks be to God, which giveth us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as you know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord.
Thank you, Sister Helen. And for those of us that have loved ones that we've lost, that were saved, those words are very comforting because we know they're in a better place than they were ever when they were here. And God conquers death. And by being a follower, by being a Christian, we can look forward to the same thing, which is the joy of being with our Lord Jesus Christ. And I think that's time. Mm-hmm. So he gave him some great words at the end of his letter. All right, next time we'll be studying Proverbs.